Hey, I'm here with Joshua. Joshua and I've been friends for quite a long time, haven't we, Joshua?
Yeah, it's been quite a ride the last number of years with the transition from flat Earth, and now we want to flatten the curve.
We're showing a video right now. Where are you? Explain what's going on. It says Friday is Hawaiian Shirt Day.
Yeah, so that is some of my new content that I've been putting out recently featuring a 360 camera. So I wanted to kind of step up the experience a little bit more for people, because more of my complaints with the content that I put out is, hey, I'd really love to see the faces or the people that you're talking to, but unfortunately, I can't guess really where they're going to be at, and I would rather have the camera pointing at people walking back and forth on the trail so you can see their faces, because if the camera is moved when somebody approaches the table or I'm talking to somebody and then I adjust the camera, they all of a sudden become aware of the camera being there, and they're like, hey, am I being recorded? And then
You
the
like that because
conversation
it's
stops.
fixed. It's fixed, you mean? You're not worrying
What's
about
that?
you're not worrying about the camera, so they don't really notice it the same.
Right, yeah, so I gotta fix it in a certain spot, but we obviously get all of the audio in the conversation. So with the 360 camera, it is really a 180-degree, pun intended, experience, because now you can experience my environment, everybody around me, from behind me, the people that are walking in certain locations that are behind me that I can't get on camera, and in front of me, and then now with people approaching the table, like that guy in the Hawaiian shirt. For a second there, I thought he was going to grab my property because he was upset with being recorded out in public, and that's happened before. So with him and the particular conversation that I had there, it's just, a typical, why do you think the earth is flat? But unfortunately with that conversation, they weren't really, the guy I was talking to wasn't really being honest. He wouldn't give me a yes or no answer. It was all truth is relative type of thing, good for you if that's what you believe. And so they kind of stormed off, and then we started getting into the being filmed out in public, and so they kind of divert the conversation. So it was just an opportunity that I saw somebody approaching the table, and I hit record on the camera and was able to go from there. So I hope to have some more experiences there. I just posted a new video this morning that had to upload overnight. It might be still processing, but I've handed out the link to some people. That will be called Intro Flat Earth, the straw that stirs the drink. And that's about 35 minutes long, and that's just when I first initially show up at the spot I was at yesterday, May 22nd, on Saturday. And I just start recording when I put the table up, and then I show the process of setting it up and, so on. And in that video, I had an altercation with a Muslim family because I wanted to write in chalk on the ground, would Muhammad get vaccinated? And so that was a really fun interaction that I think is a really good learning experience, and I think it'll be something people enjoy.
Right. You know that, I've had a couple of strikes over mentioning things, and I didn't even think they were that bad. They did me for medical misinformation, even though one of them came from the news.
Yeah.
So we can't say too much about that, but I think everybody gets the idea about that bit, Josh. So basically, is that the video I'm going to play in a minute, but we're just not going to hear it?
You can play it. Is that
yeah, we've got a few more minutes to go on this one. I would say, though, excuse me, I would say, though, that the quality's a bit funny on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a little picky because it does record at 4K, And so it'll default to what your streaming quality and your internet is able to keep up with. And at its highest bit rate at 4K, it looks fabulous, but that's only if you're connected to Wi-Fi and not using any other devices on that. But yeah, when you kind of throttle it down to like 720 or low high definition, it is a bit grainy. And so, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a give or take with
At least
the
you
technology
told
right
us
now.
that that's what you're doing, because you know what the media does to us, and they lie about everything. At least you told us that you're on a 360 camera, so that's why the footage is a little bit off, but it's probably still better than what the news give us.
Yeah, and I think it's a really great perspective too, because you can't edit it. Also, it has to be made raw, so you can't put it into like a basic video editor. I think you can put it into Adobe of some kind, like a high expensive Adobe program, and edit the 360 video and do it that way, but I haven't, gotten that far. I'm really actually just trying to test it out. I'm considering getting the other 360 camera. Also, there's another one that does the same thing. It's an action camera. Those are the only two that will continuously run if you have a large memory card. Other 360 cameras only record for like 4 or 5 minutes, and then it stops automatically. So I really had to be picky at choosing one that I can use with 30 to 1 hour of filming, because I want people to really experience everything, because I know it can kind of be really slow. I want action and conversations all the time, but I think it's really important to also experience the waiting and like being patient with those conversations too, because you don't be careful what you wish for, I guess. You don't want to be overwhelmed with, people showing up at the table, because you kind of want it to be where you're really engaging with 1 or 2 people and there's 5 or 6 people listening. And so once those 2 people leave and they're like, okay, I've had enough, or okay, I'll look into it, then the next 2 or 3 people will come up. And so there's also the managing of time and people. So for me, it can get challenging if I'm alone and there's a lot of people there. I want to address everybody's concerns, questions, and comments. So it's nice that I've recently had a guy, Miles, come out, and a few other people who, where we have previously talked, Karen, you and I, where it was just usually me. And so now I pretty much have a consistent 1 or 2 other people that come also. So that's encouraging.
Okay, this video is going to finish in a moment, so I'm going to have to swap it over. But where are you doing this, by the way?
I'm doing it at a lake called Harriet in Minneapolis. It's one of 3 lakes that all are connected south of Minneapolis, Minnesota, in the United States.
Okay, then this video now is coming to an end, so we're going to swap over. So, we've moved location now.
Yeah, so we went to a new location yesterday, May 22nd, on Saturday at the volleyball courts. It's called Lake Bede-Makaska, and that's also just south or southwest or so of Minneapolis. It's one of the most popular lakes in that area too, so as you can tell throughout the video, literally hundreds of people were outside walking around the lake, and had an opportunity to see the signs that I put up later on in that day. But this video introduction, just to show like the setup. Some people come to the table while I'm setting up, and I haven't started the live stream yet, so people have missed out on some conversations at the beginning. Some are good and some are bad, but this particular conversation, in about the middle, the 13 to 15 minute mark, is when I started to have an interaction with a Muslim family, because I feel like it's important to see what these religious people, Christians, Muslims, and Jew, think if their world leaders or their religious leaders would get the vaccine if they were alive right now. So I started with using chalk to write on the ground, would Muhammad get vaccinated? And after I write Muhammad, of this family, he was like, so what are you going to write after Muhammad? I was like, would Muhammad get vaccinated? And so that's when the conversation, gets very, chipper, I guess. It was, very rambunctious, a lot of energy, and I think it's really important just to see how it all develops and ends. I don't want to give too much away because I think that
no, people go and watch it on your channel.
Yeah, definitely.
I know that we're playing it. I know we're playing it in a way, but go and watch it on your channel.
Definitely, because you want to really get really capture the experience. Because of the 360 camera, it really kind of literally envelops you into the experience. Especially if you have like one of those VR like goggle sets that you can get for 25 or 30 bucks. It's called like VR cardboard. And you can put the thing on your head and put your phone up to it and then click the setting on your phone to go to VR mode, and you can literally move your head around and just sit there like with us, Miles and I, and watch everybody around us, just as if you were there. So it's beyond what I expected, and I really am excited to continue sharing that experience. But I guess my point about why I even wanted to address and bring this up with you is, for me, it was really fascinating how the Muslim is very respectful of Muhammad, as where the Christian, I have written Jesus on the ground and on signs and asked the same question, would Jesus get vaccinated? And many Caucasian, particularly, Christians would walk by and say, of course. Some Muslims would say, of course, because Jesus is a nice guy and he would do the right thing. And then I would obviously ask, would Muhammad? And then they kind of come back at me and they're like, whoa, hey, I didn't think you were going to ask me that. Like, why would you ask me if Muhammad would? So I wanted to try a little social experiment and see what that looked like, asking that blatantly. But they really took offense to his name being written on the ground, like beyond offense. So you definitely need to watch the video. And I guess I was really challenged at how to handle the situation because where I live here in America, in Minnesota, I'm very passionate about my ability to do and say things that I feel are within the confines of my rights. And so I really want people to experience that for their own sake, so that then they can see how certain religious types and groups not only react to their religious leaders taking and going along with CDC guidelines, but also with how Christian and Muslim dynamics are regarding their personal historical religious figures.
Right. Yeah. Well, I can't say anything either, otherwise, because otherwise we'd be saying what's on the video. I just think it's best to go and listen to it all on yours, otherwise I'd be playing it. But I do appreciate that you go out and that you do try and talk to people.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
I'm not sure if it's me, but I do it on the telephone. I wait till somebody's like, well, the problem or whatever is sorted out, and then I go into it.
Yeah, I've answered like spam phone calls or that nature where I'm waiting for a phone call from the city or something like that because I have certain health issues. So a couple times that has happened over the last couple months. It's been like AT&T from India or Philippines or something, and they're using a local area code. So I'm like, okay, maybe it's so and so. And so I answer it, and it's, DirecTV or, some sales company. And I'm like, okay, well, let's have a go at it. So that's always fun.
Yeah, you do this all on your own, though, don't you? You don't go out with anybody else.
No, not typically. I don't have anybody who comes with me in the car or helps me set up per se, but after everything's all ready to go and I've been going at it for a little bit, some local people might see I'm live and come and join me, but there's a give and take to that. I think it's really beneficial, whereas before I felt more comfortable going on alone because I could manage what was being talked about and how I respond. I can't manage how other people respond and react to the conversations, and maybe somebody else might have their own agenda that hey, I'm going to use this guy as an opportunity to talk about what I want to talk about and kind of take over and be a disruptor. So I just go out. I'm kind of over letting people know I'm going out because I don't get any response, or they're busy, or oh yeah, where are you at? And it's 4 hours into me being there, and it's bro, I'm leaving. I've been here for 5 hours. So if you really wanted to come out and join me, you would have talked to me at the beginning of the day, because I don't, so there's that, but this isn't really for everybody. So it's not something that you can just get up and do, and then as if to say you're selling something and you're trying to make money. If you really don't feel, I feel if I didn't have the already experiences and the things that I did over the last 10 years to get me to what I was doing, 4 or 5 years ago when Flat Earth started to become popular, I wouldn't have been able to develop into the desire to help and inform people. Whereas I think some people, it's kind of trendy to be a flat earther and talk about it because it's very simple to talk about. You could be a Poe and talk about flat earth. Yeah, sure. It's very easily debatable and it's fun to debate. And I do still think that people who think and believe or know the earth is flat, I think that they more so do believe that it's flat, than the opposite, where people who would debate flat earther, but they're really a globe believer, I think eventually their true colors would show, which then pigeonholes it down to, well, are you doing activism to make money or raise awareness and just see where the chips lie? And so I think over the last number of years, people have started to weed themselves out, I guess. And we've seen the stable flat earthers who do a really good job with sharing and listening and the education that goes along with that. And I think it's interesting, just to close up this idea a little bit before I lose it. I was listening to a chat yesterday, and it was kind of along the regards of people want to call other people shills and agents or anything like that. But, if you look at what happened with Flat Earth 5 years ago, 2015, 2014, people were calling those people who first initially released the idea of Flat Earth shills or whatever. Now, people who are Flat Earthers now who learn about it or hear about it or whatever, they don't even know who those people are from 2014 or 2015. Yeah. So it's kind of eventually the people who have been in this game for 3 or 4 years, we've known that this is true the whole time. Flat Earth will stand on its own. So it doesn't matter who shares it or where you get your information from about Flat Earth. We all have our own qualifiers in the way that we vet people out who are true flat earthers, people who honestly know their S and really want to inform, and people who don't. I think it's become very, very clear now of who people are Poes, actual Poes or not. So I think I just wanted to really put that out there. So Flat Earth, as always, has always stood on its own. It doesn't matter where it's coming from, whether they're an agent or not. the truth will boil out, and sooner or later, what you're left in the pot is gems, and that's what flat Earth has become. So I think it's even worse for people to hide it, though.
And do you know what I think? I think if you want to know any information, a lot of the people who are awake are doing it. It's the awake ones, you know. They're the ones that are questioning things and making videos and putting things together. It's not the scientists and all that. You just have their bog standard. Me and Amy did a video that was, it probably will go out before this one, but if not, it'd be just after this one. But it was telling you, basically, they wouldn't say that. Well, basically, we all have to fly to Canada to get to America. No matter where you come from, you've got to fly to Canada.
Can you drive out of Canada to come to America then, or no?
You've got to fly to Canada and go down. It's crazy, isn't it? And they said the shortest distance always isn't the fastest distance, and that you have to do it on this sort of bend. And it's like, when do we ever bend? What, are we sort of in some tubes going somewhere? You know, I don't know. It's bizarre.
They're really trying to screw with people and confuse them.
Anyway, just changing the subject a bit. I hope you don't mind. I just wanted to know how you were, you know, with your health.
Yeah, no, sure. Go ahead. I am great now. I feel really fantastic. I just turned 40 on May 2nd, and so that has been really a milestone for me personally. Having
Josh,
been born with...
if people don't know who you are, just explain a little bit about what's happening with you.
Yeah, so in 1981, I was born in Minnesota with what mainstream science would call cystic fibrosis. And so with cystic fibrosis, there are particular qualifiers that they come to and diagnose somebody with this, because with CF, it's the same symptoms through across the board, unlike what's currently happening. And so if you have CF, everybody with CF has the symptoms that I have. Now, the degree of seriousness with the symptoms, like really bad lungs that need to be transplanted before you're 15 years old, that is certainly under consideration. So I was asked to, in 1989-ish, 1990, 9 years old I was, to get a transplant from my doctors, and I said, no, I can't do that. Are you kidding me? And so I always had this like veil, this cloud over my head, reading the science books, life expectancy for CF, reading it in the 90s and junior high and stuff. It was always, 5 or 7 years from my age. So when I was in high school, I would always read it, and I'd just, be morbid about it, right? And read the medical textbooks and say, oh, cystic fibrosis, life expectancy, 24, 25 years old. So I'm like, oh, okay. So by the time it's like 2000, 2005.
Can I ask you something? Can I ask you something? When they said about the transplant, was that to give you a longer life then?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Of course, yeah. I mean, you would hope so. I mean, now you look at the medical industry and you're like, well...
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like when you think now that they're just out to... Well, yeah.
Yeah, so, I don't know, it just didn't feel right for me. I mean, I've got to, be an adult at 9 years old and decide, and my mom would have been like, well, sure, whatever he wants, right? So, but because of my health, though, also, speaking of family and immediate family, from the time I was 12 years old until I graduated high school, I was taken out of the home from the state because my mom was unfit, and she couldn't take care of me. Kind of left it up to me. And so that was, challenging, but obviously I learned a lot, and now I'm where I'm at now. So eventually, it took a long time. It takes a long time for you to kind of get over your diagnosis, that because you do trust science. Like as a young child, like I was, I had a lot of, kind of faith in that field and believe what they said about my health, because I had the symptoms for CF, so it's kind of hard to like be this, allopathic medicine sucks, screw you, I'm never going to the doctor. And it's like, well, be born with something and have no other alternatives, especially if you're not introduced to those things when you were younger. It's hard to get out of that mindset, even when I was in my 30s and now recently, to try to unpeel like a Velcro from the medical industry and say, okay, this is what I can compromise with, and this is what I cannot. So people at the lake that I talk to...
You've been ill a few times, haven't you?
Yeah, I was in the hospital recently twice last year, both CF-related, non-COVID related. I was tested 3 times in the ICU in June. May 29th, actually, is when I almost passed away. I had 65% oxygen. And so I go to the ICU, and they were convinced I had COVID, and I'm like, no, it's cystic fibrosis related. Albeit this whole time I'm talking to them in the ICU, I have a CPAP on my face because I could not breathe. I had so much bad pneumonia. I had such a bad lung infection from staph that I literally, if I would have stayed that night, if I would have fallen asleep that night and just like, I'll get over it because allopathic medicine sucks and I'm a rebel, I would have literally died overnight. So you have to compromise when your life is on the line. When people will cry out to Allah, Jesus, Buddha, or whatever when their life is on the line, I guarantee it. And so when you cannot breathe and you're so scared and you almost poop your pants and you pee, give me a call. Let me know how you deal with that. So I get flamed a lot by people who trust and believe in science when I share a lot of my information and testimony, having to kind of compromise and buckle and say, okay, I have to take this particular pharmaceutical drug for cystic fibrosis. And it literally did a 180 for my health. At the end of June, first week of July is when I had to start taking it. I was in the hospital for the whole month of June last year, so when it's nice outside like it is now, I'm in the hospital angry at myself because of this particular personal health decisions that I chose to do and the diet that I had at the time. So I got sick, and so I can't do anything when you're in the hospital. You're not any good to anybody. Doesn't matter your family or us flat earthers or whoever you want to identify yourself as. You're no good to anybody if you're sick and in the hospital. So I learned a huge lesson at that time, and this was last year. And so I couldn't get my oxygen percentage back up over 85%. For a whole week, it was just plateaued there, and it wouldn't get any better. And so they introduced a pharmaceutical drug to me called Trikafta that a year prior, preliminary rounds of that drug were being offered out to CF patients, and I refused it because of personal conflicts of interest, I guess you could call it. And so when you can't breathe and you can't even walk upstairs, a flight of stairs, and you think that that's how your life is going to be, and you are going to be on oxygen, because I couldn't get my oxygen myself over 85%. Without oxygen, I couldn't. I had to be on oxygen to get it up to 95%. And that was even bad for me. I usually am always at 99 or 100 sat.
Dearie me.
And so what's up?
I said, oh dearie me.
No, yeah, and so when I was introduced this again, I was just like, okay, I'll just see what happens. I have no choice. I want to get back out and do activism. I want to live my life. I don't want to be stuck in this institution, right, the hospital. And so they started me on a half a dose. You're supposed to take 2 pills in the morning, 1 at night, every day, and it's $300 a pill. $25,000 for a 28-day supply, $300,000 a year per CF patient, all paid for by the state, for me. That's all I can just say for me. I don't pay any copay, and I get a $25,000 a month drug. And so they started me out at the first week of July at a half a dose, so one pill in the morning, one pill at night. And after 72 hours, I felt 100% better. 100% better. And then after a week, when they put me on a full dose, I could not believe how much better I felt. It was, I couldn't believe it. And it was so, like, humbling at that moment. Not that I was saying, like, you know, praise God for this pharmaceutical drug, you know, Jesus sent it or anything like that. But I was quite surprised. But I did not regret not starting it earlier because I needed to learn certain things. I guess needed to almost die. And so that was, you know, my experience. And so now for me to go out to the lake and see everybody so terrified of something that has a 99% recovery rate, you know, I don't know what else to say but just have complete empathy for everything that's going on right now. But also keep my personal morals and my own constitution in order, but also be respectful. But it gives me a great opportunity to share my experience with almost dying, having fluid in the lungs, and, you know, my experience with the healthcare system right now, and then also share and listen to what's going on with other people and personal experiences. So for me, I guess everybody's experiencing this journey with me. I hope that helps clarify, like, a perspective that I have when you do watch my videos.
Thank you for explaining that, Josh, because I know it's your personal life. You know, I suppose I talk about things, but I don't talk about my health and things like that much. But I just wanted to say, the family are there now, and obviously we can see his hands out, so we know he's not happy.
No.
But you're talking to him now.
And so what's very interesting about these interactions that I had with Muslims yesterday, on Saturday, is that a lot of the people that I talked to, they were very concerned with my, you know, freely wanting to write his name on the ground, but wouldn't take the vaccine. And so they were like, well, you know, I have a problem with, you know, you even asking that question, right? But let's move on. No, of course I'm not going to take it. It's such and such and this or that. And so we saw, you know, eye to eye on some, you know, issues with current social, you know, conflicts that are going on. But the whole religious part about it was kind of put to the side. They really compartmentalized the two. And I actually even had a number of people walk by and read the sign and say, hey, Muhammad, who are you talking to? Who are you talking about? And this is like, wait a second. Okay, so maybe I could, in a way, explain away my possible ignorance of writing his name. I mean, people in the chat were like, what do you think would have happened if he would have drawn Muhammad's face on the ground, right? But which Muhammad do you think I'm talking about? I mean, you guys, we have the most Muslims in Minnesota from, you know, what they say, right? Per capita in America, allegedly. And so, what other Muhammad Ali? I mean, the boxer? I mean, so that was kind of weird to me that they would kind of look again, like look twice and be like, wait a second, which Muhammad are you talking about? Because they thought maybe it was audacious, like, what? Somebody is going to even write the praise be, you know, they always would, you know, reference that before, and say, how could you even think to write his name on a piece of paper, let alone on the ground? But ask the question, and then it was like, no, I want to know. I mean, and this is coming from a white guy, right? Which somebody would call Protestant or evangelical Christian, asking Muslims who are dark-skinned in Minnesota, Minneapolis particularly, right, with everything that's going on in Minneapolis, asking this question, and then it's like, okay, well, let's see here, how can I go around it? I'm not trying to, and that's what the guy accused me of, while who's flailing his arms around and with him. And about that same time that we're talking, he basically just said, you just want a response and a reaction out of people. And I'm like, I get your perspective, bro, but, you know, I've been asking, would Jesus get vaccinated also? You know, I would, I guess, identify as a Christian. I do feel like our Creator manifested himself as a man. Now, you know, we can get into debates about who his name is or what you call him or whatever, but I really do feel that our Creator could manifest himself as a man, okay? And so I think, like, from their perspective, that another Muslim would never, of course, ask this question within their group. So I feel like it needs to be asked, because with Christians and Jesus, would he get vaccinated or wear a mask? Many people said, of course he would. And I got the same thing in reply from a lot of Muslims too, that he would, of course, because he's a nice guy. But they would always say he's dead. You know, so, and then I would say, well, would Jesus? And then, you know, Muslims would say, well, he's dead. I mean, I don't know. And I was like, well, I guess that's your assumption, right? And so they would, you know, challenge me with that. But I think for me, it was really a great experience overall. I learned a lot with this conversation I had with this man, because I feel like it's important to, in America, to understand their, I guess, to say it bluntly, aggressiveness and aggressive response and respect of their particular religious leader. And Americans and Minnesotans who consider themselves Christian, they really don't care that Jesus' or God's name would be written on the ground. Because I don't see it that way. I don't see me manifesting a guy's name on the ground by me writing it, and then you have to walk over it or you can't step on it out of respect. I'm like, if I walked on it ignorantly and not out of hate or spite, that's my bad. If that's, you know, against, you know, your thing, because you will hear them say that with a jogger that comes by, because Muhammad was still there on the ground, and he said, hey, you know, as the passerbys, avoid this, especially if it was a Muslim person running by. He was like, hey, you know what? I don't want you to unintentionally run on this, because if a Muslim was aware that he ran on it with his foot and then found out I rode on it, if you watch the conversation I had on D-Live, Authentic Intent, that's the whole 5-hour episode from yesterday. The video that you're watching is the beginning, so I haven't even been ready to set up everything. Basically, one of the guys at the end of the video, when I'm packing everything up, said to the effect, this probably isn't the place that you should be to share and ask these questions about Muhammad, as if to say, you're white, you probably don't want to go to South or North Minneapolis in certain areas. And so, like, a lot of people in the chat started talking about, you know, quote, you know, gangs or, you know, targeted individual type stuff. And I did have to say bluntly to this guy, I'm like, well, what are you threatening me? Like, what does that mean? And so, you know, check out that conversation. But I think for a lot of people, maybe me being as the conduit, you, somebody else watching and listening may have done things differently, but I don't see anybody else asking these questions. So I'd love to see somebody else try it. Maybe it's not something that you want to do, you don't feel comfortable about it, but until then, I hope that you enjoy the conversations.
Well, you're trying to tell him something now. You've walked away from him a few times.
Yeah, I actually, I ran to my car and I came back, so you'll have to listen and find out why I ran to my car and came
people
back.
go listen on your channel, yeah.
Mm.
Maybe he could have seen it as a good omen.
I thought it was interesting that him and his family showed up, and he handled it much better than maybe one of these, quote, Muslim gangs, or, you know, I mean, not to sound like, you know, but I mean, it was actually presented in the chat, would have addressed it. You know what I mean?
They're bringing attention to your stand now. More people now are looking at what you're doing, because you're having your heated discussion.
Yeah, so a lot of people showed up, and then afterwards, as you see at the very end, I end up just talking to one of the girls in that group, and then the video from the 360 ended up stopping. I think the camera might have gotten overheated or something like that. And then about 10 minutes later or so, I was able to pick up our conversation that we were having, and that's where it continues on DLive.
Yeah. I'm just getting in now. There's a group of boys in front of your stand now. All I can see is a chest.
Yeah. And so what's really fun for the experience, if you want to come by and check out these interactions, is I go to the same place every summer. And here at this lake, Calhoun, I've been to this lake literally 100 times. And so a lot of people know me. Some people have seen me, and then they're just now first talking to me. I think this first group of boys that you're seeing, they're playing volleyball, and I've talked to them before at other locations at the lake. One of them is, I call it Doubting Thomas Beach. It's Thomas Beach, but I think it's fun to call it Doubting Thomas Beach. And so yeah, some of those boys I have actually talked to. Later on in the video, later on in other videos from that day, you will see us having some other interactions with some other boys from, probably very early college age or seniors in high school. And they just can't let go of the ball Earth. They still want to believe outer space is real, that authority would tell them the truth. I'm the one that's lying. I'm being disingenuous about coming out, and so that kind of hurts my heart a little bit that they, just can't, look into things and let things go and, be real and want truth and, honesty about certain things in their life. And, I think people just want to go along to get along and compromise. And, maybe it takes to be at the bottom of the barrel for some people before they really start to reevaluate.
Well, maybe, in your mind, you've had to do that quite a lot, so you view life differently in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
These people aren't questioning anything because they don't think they have to, but you've questioned it. Like you've said, you've had to think about life and death, and being 40 is a milestone, so you're going to look at things differently, aren't you, Josh?
Yeah, I think that's one really great experience that we have here is the ability to have a memory and be able to learn and draw through thought and ideas better ways of life. I was talking to a friend, Jim Lotus, yesterday on the phone, and he basically said, you are exactly where you want to be with truth. You were seeking it, we were seeking it, flat earth, people who were listening to Alex Jones, and then, you transition, right? You grow, and, you can't regret the things that you experienced before and learned, because now you've transitioned and molded it into what you want to see and be, and then try to accomplish, because you're not going to see anything new in this world until you influence it yourself. Otherwise, you're just sitting back. People are just sitting back waiting for a savior. They're just sitting back. Hey, you know what? He's coming. I see it. Peter, in 2 Peter, he said, people were mocking and ridiculing. Where's your great God? And then the flood came. I get it. But there's also a time where he meets us halfway. You can't tango or do the waltz and be the only one doing the waltz.
He's washing it off.
Yeah, you need to, right. So I came back from my car and said, okay, I already have it written down on these poster boards here, but I ran out of tape. I was going to hang it up on a poster board. It's already written down on a piece of paper, because what we had to compromise with was, he said, you know what, you can't have it written on the ground, but in my opinion, as from what seemed to be the spokesman for the Muslim community here, is if you write it on a piece of paper or a flag or a banner or something like that and it's off the ground, you can use that. And I'm like, well, my goodness, bro. Okay, I guess I'll be the adult. I have it already written down. I just ran out of tape. It's pretty windy right now. I can't put them up now anyways. And so I need to go to my car to get more tape. I had another spool of tape in my car. So I had to run to my car and come back and said, okay, here's some chalk, you know, you can scribble it out or whatever, but I'm not doing it. I'm not scribbling out my freedom of speech in my own country, bro, that you haven't lived in your whole life. And you can do whatever you want with it, okay? I'll compromise with you, just so I can get along with the fellow Muslims there in town. Because what it felt like was maybe a blessing in disguise, like I was saying before, is that, you know, this guy handled it a lot better, and we were able to talk it out than maybe if it would have been left on there and a certain other type of group or type of person who's Muslim comes by and sees it on the ground and says, who did this? And then who knows what happens? I mean, it's 2021 for crying out loud. So after he did that, you know, you can continue to watch. I eventually I did get the tape, and I posted that sign on the side of my table, and it was a green sign that asked the question, would Muhammad get vaccinated? Sometimes I do kind of have some fun. Another thing to know is that I spent about a year in Bangkok, Thailand in 2015, and so I taught English there, and through that I shared the gospel through the English curriculum that they had, and I am kind of a grammar Nazi, and I have fun with it. And so I purposefully spell things wrong because our first initial reaction when we see things wrong is to be a grammar Nazi and then correct somebody in our mind. And some people obviously respond on the internet about grammar and everything. If they don't agree with the topic, they'll slam you for your grammar instead of actually looking at the question at hand. So I purposefully spelled vaccine or vaccinated wrong. And I do that sometimes on the ground because then people will say, it's spelt this way. And it's like, well, now you'll always remember this interaction because I spelt it wrong. So it's kind of like a Jedi mind trick. But I don't do it too often to where people think like, well, is he really, joking around? So joshing you? I replaced the chalk on the ground with would Buddha get vaccinated. And I spelled wood as in like tree wood. So I think it's fun to me. So
right. Well, you want anyway these human interactions, don't you? You have to do it the best you can, really.
I think it's fun for me to get an idea of how, because I think about it like this sometimes. If we just close our eyes and we're at the park like that, maybe using the 360 camera, and you're watching it when you can have sound and everything, maybe put headphones on because it's got spatial audio, and so it's 3D audio when you have headphones on, so you hear everything, so you literally hear the volleyball courts behind you, and so when you spin the camera around, if you watch the volleyball, you'll hear the talking behind you, so you kind of understand what I'm saying. And so, you want to get involved in the experience with the camera, 360 experience, and I close my eyes sometimes, and I think of us just floating in this ether or whatever, and just like floating along, and just I'm just hanging out at the lake, and there's a, hey, what are you doing? And it's like, oh, not much, just hanging out at the lake. And they're like, oh yeah, and then we talk for 10 minutes, and they're like, okay, bye, and then they just float along. You know, like that Modest Mouse song, you just float on, right? There's, oh yeah, what are you doing? Oh, okay, all right, bye, and then we just get on to our life, right? Like, after positive or negative interactions, like, I move on. Like, people mock me and call me names. They'll just ride on a bike and just call me an idiot, you know, and keep continuing on and biking. So it's like, oh, okay, somebody just called me an idiot, but I don't go home and write in my diary and cry about it. If you are going to do this, you need to expect the pluses and minuses. If you're going to invest in cryptocurrency, you need to invest in losing $10,000 in one day and making $20,000 in a day. So you come with the ups and downs in this world. But one thing that I have developed, I guess, over time is being aware of how I respond and react to everybody who walks by and calls me a name. I don't want to, I guess like this is going to kind of sound a little new agey, I guess, to some people who are Christian, but I don't want to build up negative energy as people walk by and then just have it come at me like a storm in one day when I'm out at the lake, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I want to keep it even, Steven, just kind of no highs, no lows, but just kind of like, maybe we got a little spike of like a 5% increase, but also we got like 7% decrease, Like I don't want anything dramatic to happen. And so I really wanted to show I was going to stand my ground with this chalk writing with Muhammad, but also be like, okay, you know what? Just me, I really felt God just saying, Josh, you're just going to have to let this go.
Yes, really I think the bigger person is the one that can let go. To be honest, the one that can cry, the one that it's all the things that you're taught are the weaknesses. In our history, right? Just putting it as an equivalent, the good kings in their eyes are the ones that fought and battled, and the weak and the bad kings are the ones that wanted peace. So it's how they put the words, isn't it? But, yeah, you've got a bunch of girls now.
Yeah, so youngsters are always really fun. I think what's really great about 2021 and Flat Earth is everybody's heard about it now. And so now what it is just clarifying what Flat Earth really is and what it's not. And a lot of people think it's a disk floating in outer space, and outer space is still real. So I think it's really important to maybe use some comparisons. I have started to use, if you buy me a ticket to Mars, or Santa Claus's workshop, then I'll buy you a ticket to Mars. It's really the same thing. And so when you really start to relate and not try to dominate or debate, but just have a casual conversation and reason with these people, I think it's beneficial. As the video continues, I end up talking to just one girl who is a Christian, and I felt like I needed to focus on her more. And so the youngsters leave because they get so frustrated with me that they really want to believe that outer space is real, and I can't prove that it's not, right? I don't have a degree. I'm just some guy at the lake. So to them, it's thought-provoking, but if you're not engaging with them one-on-one, they will lose interest. And I think it's kind of comparison to friends and family, or people who you talk to and they're really in it. Yeah, I'm really into the flat Earth. It's so interesting. And then you let them go for like a day or two, a week maybe. You're not around them. You're not influencing their environment or their life. And you get back to them and you're like, oh yeah, so did you check out that video? And they're like, oh, you know what, I just got caught up with stuff, man. I got work or family or kids or this or that. And so it's to be patient with people and be aware that they're busy. So sure, you can send them a 5 or 10 minute video about Flat Earth, but we can't be lazy in this, because social media throttles or ghosts or deletes altogether content and channels. And so I think it's on a personal one-on-one basis is to really help them feel your energy through your voice and how you're passionate about this. And I think that the youngsters want to be taught. I really do feel that they are seeking somebody else to tell them something, to then weigh it on what they've been taught. But unless you are constantly engaging with them,
Maybe
and then
it's
I
all
lose them
about
kind of at the end.
seeds, Josh. It might not hit them today, but it might hit them next week, next year.
Yeah. Right.
You've
So,
put the seed in their brain.
and that's great that you brought that up, because with the conversation I'm having with the young lady at the very end of the video when it cuts off, and then it picks back up on DLive, Authentic Intent, she was really challenged by, okay, so has anybody contacted you or come back to you and said, hey, because of you, right, basically, I'm a flat earther, or because of you, flat earth then led me to Christ. That was her kind of biggest, thing, is like, whatever you're doing, Josh, okay, that's great, but you're a Christian. You're supposed to be sharing the gospel, okay? So how are you or benefiting anybody? How are you benefiting the kingdom in this or that? And so that typically becomes a very common headbutting thing with other Christians at the table, is those who are very, Baptistic in a way, or very Protestant, are very staunch about preaching the gospel and can't really in their head fathom any other way to lead somebody to Christ if that's what their motive is. And so that's another part of that conversation, which is interesting. Maybe people would be interested in listening to my perspective of challenging. And I are alike, so don't get it confused. I just am more aggressive with her because she claims to be something, and I'm like, okay, well, you've never been to space, and you believe that they landed an RC car on Mars or done this or that, and the Earth is a ball, but you believe in Christ, so like you're settling, in my opinion. Like there's more to truth than just this one narrow way in that sense. I think that creation is a great opportunity to share a creator. That creator can be interpreted by obviously dozens of people or types, but what it comes down to is we were designed. It wasn't a fluke of nature, evolution, or anything like that, in my strongest opinion and observations and experiences here. And so when I can relate it to them in that way and still say, okay, because what a lot of Christians, and I'm sure some may know this and some might not, is even flat earth Christians would say it's a geocentric earth, so the earth is stationary in space and then everything revolves, the stars and everything revolve around it. Or there's globe-centrism, where it's the globe is stationary and the earth and the sun and the moon move around us in a small pattern and everything revolves around us, but space is still real. And so I feel it's important to compare a creator, God, which I feel is infinite, has infinite wisdom and creative possibilities. We co-create. So we, again, have to dance along, and we will be guided as long as we dance within the guidelines of, obviously, a person's personal religious beliefs is what they would be guided by. But for me, I feel like I'm a free spirit, so I'm going to say that land and earth go on infinitely, horizontally forever, as if we're walking on a table. And we're just a little dust mite or something like that as comparison for size. And if we would walk, 10 years in one direction, we would still not be at the edge or whatever you want to call it. And so I think it's important to bring that comparison to Christians and say that, yeah, sure, Earth is flat, but it also goes on infinitely forever. It's just up to us to discover it. And if we live in fear or compartmentalize because of an Antarctic treaty, for example, it's pretty hard for us to escape. And so if we have to compromise and live in the realm that we call Earth, then all I can do, I guess, is say, well, there are prison walls, and we can get out of this prison if we just all join up, right? and get out of the prison. So yeah, I think that's what I love encouraging people, though, too, is that there is more to explore, because on a ball, it's finite, and there's only so much surface area.
Yeah, you've got a few girls and a few, younger people and some older people. Oh, the video's just finished. Hang on a second. I've got to, what can I finish it off on, Josh?
Yeah. Did you want to replay, or did you want to go back to a certain spot, or you could just end it? That's fine.
We've been going nearly an hour. Let me go back so we can finish it. Come on, go back.
Sometimes it has actually crashed my phone when the video has started to play. I think it might be the 360 encoding, that it might be too big when the computer initially starts it up. So don't be surprised if it crashes your computer.
Well, we're back. We're back with the discussion right now with the family. But Josh, it's been really nice talking to you. I really appreciate. Oh, my like's gone off. I liked it. Now it's like it again. Thank you very much for explaining, and I'm really glad that you're well in health.
Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. It really is encouraging to have all the encouragement from everybody else. And then,
yeah, and thank you so that you go out quite regularly to do this.
Yeah, that's the thing too that I think is really a juggling match for me. Is I don't want to be anybody's prophet or teacher or somebody to look up to positively or negatively, and I'm not a representative of Flat Earth per se. Like I said before, it stands really on its own. So I really do try to only go out 2 or 3 times a week, and I always try to go to a different location the next day, usually because I don't want to wear out my welcome, I guess. Because I want people to percolate and marinate on the ideas, and if I don't want to become a nuisance, I guess you would call it. I'm sure there are some, ways to compare how I want to manage and balance my time out, but people will obviously say it's just for attention, and I just want to spark interactions for controversy or show that I'm right or something like that. It's really to bring awareness, and I just so happen to have a particular way of bringing that awareness to Flat Earth. I think it is the most important topic that I have ever come across, separate from spirituality and religion. As an objective human being experiencing this, environment, to experience it now subjectively, having questioned it, I think that you can still be an individual and still be part of a group. And I think that for us who have likened to the idea of Flat Earth, Flat Earth is much like religion, I guess, or spirituality. In my opinion, I'm sure this might trigger somebody, and in a sense, veganism too, where mention it every once in a while, like bring it up or maybe compare it to a real life situation. But I don't want to go out and preach Flat Earth all the time. I just so happen to, 4 hours, a couple times a week, really just want to hit it hard. Like it's an intent for me to go out. I don't passively hand out Flat Earth cards when I'm at Target checking out at the checkout lanes. That's not me. I don't hand out Flat Earth and talk to somebody at the gas station real quick to talk about it. That's not me. So everybody has, their way to offer it. Some people.
Yeah, you're not wearing any shoes either, are you?
What's that?
You're not wearing any shoes either.
No. I
just noticed.
So.
Yeah.
I think, like everything, subtle and sweet, moderation at its best is what I try to do. So. I like to be alone, usually. I mean, I know there's a meme out there that I kind of identify with. Like, I'm a popular loner, I guess. People know who I am, but I got a small group of people that I talk to, and it's up to you to decide, really, what it comes down to. The listener, the viewer, whatever. Decide yourself. What would you do? And why do you think the way that you think? And so, if you can do better than me, or you enjoy what I do, support what you like.
I just realised the one man standing with the women, he's filming it too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I thought that was really good. And I thought that was important too to, you know, I think that it'll be a learning experience for everybody. I don't think there's much negative that he could use in regards to my filming. I guess I would, to an extent, plead a little bit of ignorance, I guess. I thought this was America. I didn't think that the Muslim community had so much pull on peer pressure and wanting to remove, you know, stuff like that on the ground. So that kind of upset me. I did have this to say, though. I wanted to share this because this is my conclusion that I came to yesterday. So this is my quote. I don't know, we could probably end it on this if you have anything else.
No, that's brilliant. We've just put this on to finish our video, Josh. Josh, thank you so much again. But we'll say goodbye after I've said goodbye on here. But for this video...
Sure. Let me just share this quote real quick, because this is my conclusion of that day yesterday. And then do your thing, okay? Just a second. End quote. This is my decision here. If American Christians respected and honored Jesus as much as Muslims have revered for Muhammad, there would be zero Muslims in America.
Thank you for that, Josh. As ever, it's a pleasure, and thank you very much for spending that time talking to me. We haven't spoken for a little while, have we?
No, it's been a while, and it's really good to see you're getting back after it. I actually have gotten notifications because I have on another one of my YouTube accounts that I had a number of years ago. I had your channel up, and I saw that you started to do these, and so I was glad to see you're up, and then things just worked out where we started talking again. So
yeah, we all got a bit lazy in there. You know, in some ways, I spoke to a lot of people, and other times, you know, people I've spoken to a lot over the years, I didn't really speak to many of them. You know, I don't know, it's a bit weird, really. Yeah, weird times. But anyway, Josh, thank you so much for your time and for the video and for the chat room. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
Goodbye.